Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome. My name is Michaela Schonler, and I'm so pleased to be here presenting this two-part series of live-stream performances and films by 4 artists of African descent, and it's organised by Amani Creatives. Next to me here, I have Emanuela Yogalole. Hello, hi.
Hi, Michaela.
Can you tell me something about your organisation?
So our organization is called Amani Creatives. We are a collective of artists from local African communities, and we are also an arts and cultural organization. If I can add something else about our organization, since 2015, we profile and produce African showcases.
Okay, fantastic. And how has the pandemic affected the role that you have in the community?
The pandemic has affected us in a number of ways. First of all, so far we used to work in a live format, thing we no longer can do, or at least at the moment. And we've also been affected by the other way we've been affected by the pandemic is, like I was saying, we used to get the wider members of the community involved in what we do through our community choir, for example, our community festival, and just by taking our artists and our showcases to different venues and festivals, and we no longer can do that. And also, generally, our artists in particular can't really work currently, or they can. The way they've been working is reduced because venues are closed, festivals are not taking place. I know some venues, festivals are starting again to reopen and so on. But so that's how we've been affected by the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean it's not easy, but you can see how it would affect musicians, artists, and so on. But how do you think it's affected your audiences?
Our audiences in terms of the wider community, based on, for example, a feedback we got from the audience in the past, the people used to say things like, Amani is their only opportunity to get to experience African art and culture. So because of the pandemic, the community doesn't have that opportunity right now. In terms of our own community, the local African communities, Amani is also an opportunity for them to share their culture, to celebrate their heritage, their history, their arts, and again, they can't do that.
Right. And we were talking earlier about the assumptions. I'm so used to watching things online and watching performances go on, and you don't actually ever really know all the amount of work and money and training that goes to putting all of this together. So that leads me to asking you about this project right now, and what sparked it, and how did it come about?
Exactly, the outbreak of the pandemic inspired this project, because straight away we could tell we'll be struggling in this new context. We were not prepared, for example, for digital formats in terms of digital skills or adequate equipment. So we asked for this funding. Actually, I'll take this opportunity to say thank you to our funders, but also to lottery players behind our funders, because without this funding, Amani wouldn't still be around. So because thanks to this funding, we were able exactly to get trained in digital skills, but also to buy different equipment, really expensive equipment, and to pay a top-notch professional to put them together to build for us this live stream equipment we now have, and we're using for this work this evening.
And how did you go about finding the artists? Because you work with a lot of artists, musicians.
I think we've used the community we've managed to build around the brand Amani so far. This community includes artists, partners, communities themselves. So we've used them to identify these 4 commissioned artists. 2 of them are artists that we've worked with in the past, and 2 are more or less new to Amani Collective. So this is how we managed to find our commissioned artists.
Well, we are going to let the artists and musicians speak for themselves, but can you just introduce them briefly of who's involved in this project?
Yeah, briefly, because I'd like you guys to discover these artists by yourselves. So we have 4 amazing artists lined up. We have Papa Sam, originally from Sierra Leone. I love his voice. He has a beautiful voice. He makes beautiful music. I also love the second artist for this evening program, who's called Christian. He has a Ghanaian heritage and also a British heritage. He does a number of art forms. He's a visual artist, he's a dancer, he's a choreographer. He does a number of things. He's so amazing, talented. And next week we'll have Tshepe, who's originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's a musician as well. And we'll have the beautiful Yusra, who has a Somali heritage. She does drama, poetry, and visual art as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Have we got time for one more question? I wanted to ask you whether there was anything that you had learnt as an organisation or as a community that this pandemic has given you. What going forward? What have you gained?
I think it had become like just a generic to say art is important, but I think with the experience of this pandemic, I think most people, if not everyone, we've realized really how important art is.
Yeah.
And also, personally, I think I was amazed to live, to experience how human beings we can be creatives.
Yeah.
And also, when we decide to do it, we can really come together, support each other, and do impossible things. Like I said, when we decide to do so. So when we want to come together, to help each other, to support each other, we can do stuff.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much
for
inviting me along as well, just riding along on the ride here.
Thanks for coming.
Very welcome. I would like to introduce Christian Asare. He is, as Emanuela was saying, a multidisciplinary artist. He is a trained dancer, choreographer, fashionista. He's a phenomenal visual artist, and now he's doing film as well, if that wasn't enough. He is Black, British, Ghanaian heritage, and it's really interesting. And we're going to watch a little clip of a couple of minutes before seeing the film that he has produced.
Where I am now, I think more often than not, when you're looking for something to create, you're looking for a stimulus, or you're looking for something specific, you're looking for a subject matter. But I found more often than not the easiest way to get that is to simply observe where you are. Observe the energy around you, observe the things that you're going through, and take from that as far as what is most emotionally pressing to me right now. And with all the things that are happening in the world, I thought of the people in my life and the people in my family. And I thought of the young women in my family, especially, because they mean so much to me. And I wanted to paint this as a way to not necessarily empower them, but I guess embolden them into the fullness of their identity. Because I think in this time more than any, it really knocks people of color confidence in themselves. Not because there's anything to be worried of or for, but because the difficulties in the world can inflict on you if you're not someone who's stronger of spirit. And I kind of wanted to imbue that within them through my work.
That's the very talented Christian, and now we're going to watch the film that he was commissioned to do for this project, and it's called Change. welcome back. And we have Christian here. Hello, Christian.
Hi.
Hi, it's really lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
I really felt a lot of energy in that piece. I loved it. When you were commissioned by Amani Creatives, what was your starting point? Because you've sort of got loads of places you can go when it comes to creating art, really.
Yeah. When I started making this piece, I wanted to make something that, well, when I was making the piece, I thought the brief was centered around African diaspora.
Yeah.
And I had to make something that was dance-based. And I think more often than not, when we're asked to do something that's African-based and diaspora-based, the first thing we go to is our traditional dances.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy them, and I have a lot of root in what I do in them. But I also feel like traditional African dances interlace a lot of other dance forms and dance cultures. And they're not something that we see or that we talk about too often because of the way that they're modernized or the way that they're co-operated or co-opted into newer forms of dance.
Can you break that? That's really interesting. Can you break that down a little bit, like an example, for example?
Yeah. So, for example, African dance, most African dance is based in having a lower center of gravity. So, Western dance is usually upright and very poised and presented, whereas African dance is more rooted in your core and rooted in your hips and in your breathing. So with that being said, those beats kind of come from our inspirations from the sea and from nature around us and our own rhythms as far as our heartbeats. And those are kind of what form the drum beats and rhythms that a lot of our dancers go to in Africa. And Africa is an incredibly diverse place. There's 52 countries to choose from. So that's a very basic basis for a lot of different types of African dance and culture and music. And these, for instance, have inspired things like jazz. And jazz in of itself has inspired dance forms like modern jazz. And then derivatives of modern jazz become commercial dance, which is things you see behind Janet Jackson or Britney Spears or all of these things. But the rhythms are still the same and the roots are still the same. It's just they're not credited in the same ways because they're brought into a new age and refaced.
Right.
So what I wanted to do was essentially show the African interlacing in all of these cultures. And I also wanted to explore the black male body as far as African culture is concerned. I think we're always curtailed into a hyper-masculine ideal, and it really hinders a lot of African men from really exploring the depth and the breadth of what they can offer. Right. Because I feel like we have grace, we have beauty, we have fluidity, and it's as natural to us as our strength. But because of the way that the media and just the things that we've been experiencing curtail young people into feeling like they can only express themselves in one way. Yeah. So I also wanted to challenge that concept.
There's definitely, you can see the tension, literally the tension in that.
Yeah.
And you're drawing on, obviously, you're a trained dancer. And I'm guessing you're trained in African dance, but you're also you're trained ballerina. Do you call them ballerinas, boys?
No.
No, what do you call you?
Well, I trained as a contemporary dancer. I trained as a modern dancer.
Right, okay.
Which is kind of, it's a coupling of learning different techniques around how you use your body as an instrument and as a performing tool. So yeah, I think different dance styles originate from different places and they have different energies, but I always take mine from my roots and culture because it's most attenuated and most attuned to my body, if that makes sense.
So it feels like a personal artistic choice?
Well, yes, in many ways. I think when you're training as a dancer, again, you're very much typecast as a male to fit, strong, male, all of these things, etc., which can really curtail your creative output.
Right.
You're less inclined to try things that are different or that step outside of that because it is the typecast for a black male.
Right.
So I again wanted to challenge all of these things and push these boundaries and also challenge what it means to be African. To my mind, anything that I create is African because I am African.
Yeah.
And therefore it doesn't have to have a particular pattern or a particular drum beat or to show my traditional affiliation for it to be considered any less African.
Yeah.
So I wanted to steer away and maybe ask the question about what diaspora feel is African to them.
Because you were born in Britain.
Yes.
You come from a long line of Ghanaians.
Yes.
But then you're educated in Africa, in America, in Europe. So I'm thinking about all of those influences in terms of heritage, culture, all sorts of things. How do they impact your work now?
I think when you have experience of different social norms in different cultures and different structures and your place in them and how, I guess, the ripples that you create in those spaces, you're more aware of what messages you can create. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of what audiences you're reaching and how this affects them as well. So I think it was quite a blessing to be able to have had an education in more than one place because I think I have an understanding of arts and culture from more than one perspective.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that my heritage informs all of these things.
Yeah, that it sort of makes it better in a way. It all comes together.
Very much so.
I mean, I think one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, and just given it's not just the pandemic this year, but we've had all the Black Lives Matter stuff and how that reverberates and how that affects us as Black people. And so my last question is, what do you have to say? What's your message to the young, aspiring artist with African, roots out there? What do you have to say to them?
I think this year has been hard for a lot of people in a lot of very different ways. And the strength that we found in each other has really helped get us all through this in ways that we couldn't have foreseen. And I think that's something that we definitely need to remember and to hold on to and to grow exponentially. Because I think in this digital age, things move a lot faster.
Yeah.
And we can afford to move things a lot faster. And we're more aware of the power that we have in and for change. So with that being said, I think I would say that we shouldn't be wary of what we're capable of.
Right. I'm hearing agility as well somewhere, isn't it? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're really capable of so much.
Yeah.
So much. And I think limitation is really temporary and useless.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah,
just go
that's
for
great.
it, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
that sounds really corny.
No, it's not. I don't think no, just go for it. I think that's it's a really good thing. If people want to look for you online, where do they go, Christian?
Instagram is probably the easiest.
Okay.
At XTIAN. So that's my first name, but with an X instead of Christ. And then Asare.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you for
Can't
having
wait
me.
to see what you have for us next.
Thanks. Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
More good
brilliant.
things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh. So next we have Papa Sam Alafia. He is Sierra Leonean born. He is a global musician that's kind of played all over the world, and he's created something very specific for this for this piece for Amani Creatives. You're playing.
Play. Just any track on my track.
That was very good.
Which anything?
You did really well. Yeah. Yeah, me too. It's nerve-wracking. You.
Just play anything.
Right, so we've got a bit of spare time with me, and luckily I have some interesting information about Sam. Sam was born in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and moved to the UK in the 80s. He writes and he performs what's called palm wine music. This is music that will be sort of evolved from traditional music, and when the Portuguese sailors came back to Sierra Leone, they brought their guitars, and then these things fused together to bring this kind of palm wine music together. What else do I know? That he has also performed with artists such as Seal and King Masco. He toured the United States and Japan with an African band called Rokoto. And he is an accomplished musician, composer, storyteller, teacher. There is nothing that he doesn't do, really.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining. Here is the narrative. Once upon a time, there lived 5 boys who came from a very, very close bond, growing up in their childhood and all through their life. Now, these boys did everything you can think of together. They swam in beaches, in rivers, they played football all the time. These boys did it all the time together, just as brothers do. Now, they would rally each other up in time for school. They would always meet up. One thing about these boys, I'll tell you the truth, they were so consistent, they were so disciplined. Their dressing would even make peacocks jealous. Right? So, one day, they would rally each other up just in time for everything. They always had these ideas, and tell you the truth, as they were walking one time to school, one of them had a light bulb moment, and he held on to it, and he thought about it. He never acted on it because they were so disciplined in a way that they would not want to break any laws. So he held it, a very special thought, and they would meet up after school. They'd go home, run each other, and they'd see the mama, see the auntie, the uncles, nana, guardian, whosoever was at home. Now, discipliners there was one man, a very prolific man in his time. His name was Django P. So full of ideas. So, one bright sunny morning, when the sun's shining and the birds are chopping away, Django P said, I'm going to act on my light bulb moment. He goes, any of you got your canvas shoes? He goes, well, I'm not walking barefoot, come on now, Django P. And he said, well, why'd you ask about the canvas shoes? He says, well, I was just thinking, what if, just today, right? We could just go to the beach and just enjoy this weather and have a swim, and no one would know, you know? And the other jumped up, he said, wait, LP, don't you mean Lumley Beach, man? And the other one jumped up and he said, yes, man, that's the one. And I said, well, I'll add to your idea. How about we use our lunch money to get some coconut cakes? Now fill our stomach up real nice and have plenty of energy for the whole day. they did until they went to the beach and they swam some more and they played football. Oh, they played football. The whole day, play, we play. Never rest. The next day, guess what? More of the same, until a week and a half passed. And after the week, you have to remember, they would always go back home and they would cook up stories like this. They'd say, fancy this one. Ooh, mama, school was brilliant today. You know, Miss Johnson even said, hello. Ooh, papa, I have to tell you something. Very importantly, do you remember Mr. Jump? He goes, oh yeah, Mr. Jump. Mr. Jump has lost weight, can you believe it? And you go, really? And you cook up all these tinga tales and then fry up a pot of beans and then while they walk again, they'd run each other up and they say, let's go to school again. Smart as they are, making pickles jealous. They'd meet up and they'd say, well, guess what? They bought that pot of beans again. Might as well go to the beach, man. There's nothing we're doing here, nothing for us. And off they go. Walking, striding, casually hopping about. Boom! A very, very interesting happened one sudden day. Just as they were walking to the beach, going with the flow, suddenly, this one car came out of nowhere. Absolutely nowhere, and got best of Jungle P before he could blink, and he sat down, his left foot smashed, completely gone. Now in that state of absolute confusion, he sat there laying down looking at his foot. All the things he had been doing came tumbling down, and he started thinking to himself all the lies he'd been telling, and he realized they're gonna find out. And third of all his friends, saddest part, ahoy, ahoy, they all ran away. And so he started to hum this song very softly unto himself.
Janga yes no good oh. Janga yes no good oh.
Hey,
I follow me party, we go Lamle Beach. Motoka go broke me feet. Janga yes no good oh. Na 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 na. Janga yes no good oh. Na 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 na. I follow me party, we go Lamle Beach. Motoka go broke me feet.
see no good oh. Na 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 na. True one see no good oh. Na 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 na. I follow me body, we gonna Lamley Beach. Motoka go broke me feet.
Yeah. Janga yes no good oh. Na 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 na. Janga yes no good oh. Na 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 na. I follow me party, we gonna Lamley Beach. Motoka go broke me foot. Na 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 na. Janga yes no good oh. Na 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 na. Janga yes no good oh. Na 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 na. I follow me party, we gonna Lamley Beach. Motoka go broke me foot. Motoka go broke me foot. The motoka go broke me foot. Motoka go broke me foot.
Fortunately for Jungle P, he was quite lucky on this day because he got help just in time to the hospital. And after his operation, after he'd seen the doctor, he was laying there in the ward on his own when everything is pitch silent, everything is dark, and all these thoughts, this train of thoughts started coming down to him and everything's tumbling down. And he thought to himself, this is something I will never, ever do again. all the things that he'd done wrong, he registered in his mind and he said, I will never do it again. And so he did, as he hummed along very melancholically this beautiful song.
Me mama been there tell me say, me papa been there tell me say, Tranga yes no good, I know hear me, Tranga yes no good.
This beautiful, wonderful, slow, melancholic lullaby was very fast replaced with hot pepper soup, laced with all creatures, great and small. And as he slowly drifted into his sleeping pattern, Jungle P woke up the next day and made a very genuine, sincere promise to himself to never, ever take anything for granted, especially when everything, literally everything, is going on well around him. And so, he woke up the next day, totally bathed in pain, and he even reassured himself some more to absolutely stay away from whatever trouble might come across. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know this story, Jungle P grew up to be a very, very, very respectable and a very talented footballer, not only in his time, but a legend even way past his prime. True story. Thank you for listening. OT. We got the song outro. Fantastic.
Sit down, you can have a rest now after all of that. And so, yeah, I want to find out what, when you were asked by Amani Creatives to come up with something for this commission, what brought you to storytelling and music?
Well, I've been doing storytelling in schools, but this was a time I think, or this is a time I think, to take storytelling to another level, and the kind of music, unamplified music, to another level.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to say thanks to Amani for giving me the chance to do so, to explore what I know is up this coconut.
And so I was reading that there's some references to kind of some of the original music,
Yes.
and some sort of homage to some of the older instruments. Can you tell us a bit about that? I'm curious.
The genre I introduced, well, I hope some people know it, some people don't. If you grew up in Sierra Leone, you will definitely have heard or know of the word gumbe. Gumbe, because it's a happy kind of genre of music. I heard it since I was a boy. And it's used for weddings, christenings at the time. And as soon as you hear there's a particular cue, which I even use in the music, when you hear that cue, you know it's time to get up. So it's a call to attention. Hey, it's time Celebrate life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make it happen.
Yeah. You chose a specific story.
Yes.
And I think you were borrowing from some traditional stories.
That's right.
And so tell us a bit more about that and where did they come from? Is it a specific story or were you using a combination of?
Well, talk about storytelling. I'm going to refer especially to my heritage. now.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a particular lecturer. She was my grandmother. Very clever woman. She's called Irima. She was called Irima. When she tells you a story, she tells you the story to 3/4 of the story, then she stops. And then she says, okay, you go and figure out the end. Tomorrow we'll continue. So that ending is up to you. How you see the story pertaining to the subject, how you want to finish the story.
Yeah. And I'm going to get back to that.
Okay.
But before I get back to that story and how it ended, I want to touch on that different type of, because I'm trained as a teacher myself, so I find that really interesting. That's a particular style of teaching, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. It's a responsibility or engagement of the student. So the student is not 100% spoon-fed.
Yeah.
No, they give you 70. You go and find the 30. Bring it. And let's all make learning happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's give and take.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So this Django...
Django P is just a name.
Yeah, Django P. Who was he? What's the footballer's name?
What do you call that? Django P is the head man.
Django P, most prolific man ever.
Who is he
So
though?
full of ideas.
It's from a group of friends. We were making up the story.
Yeah, I know, I can tell.
It's a story in progress.
I was going to ask my assistant, Wikipedia, but I don't think they're going to be able to
You
come
will
up
never
with
find
it.
him there. Don't know about this one. I was there.
So you're using actually the form of the storytelling,
That's right.
not the story itself. You two came up with that.
Yes, we debated it. We came up with the characters.
Right, yeah. Very good, very good. And where, we were talking earlier that you were, you were brought up in Sierra Leone, but you did a lot of traveling around Africa, Nigeria. We're talking about Lagos and in the 80s, and then you came to Britain. You were signed with the
Mango Records with the Rokoto band.
So you've been all over the world, and you've also been playing different. It's not just your specific music. You've been playing so much. So let's pull all of that together. And I really want to know, when you're now making work on your songwriting, are you sticking to your roots, or what's happening to your progression as an artist?
Well, you can take the man out of the continent, but you can't take the continent out of the man.
Okay.
I'm going to use what I have plus what I have here and make it work for me.
Yeah.
Because there are people living here. I cannot say I came here to discover people. I'm a liar. No, I came to embrace what I find.
Yeah, that's
and
a good way
work
to
with
put it.
it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And you do come from, you're ever evolving. And if you think about the palm wine music, that was a music that was evolved.
Yes.
That evolved through sailors coming to
That's right.
the continent.
Yeah, because people, we had seafarers, people who walk on the sea with ships. Each time they come home, not just with music, they come with costumes as well.
Yeah.
Because it was dance and music.
Yeah.
So they come and tell a particular story by dance, by the kind of what they encounter in Europe and other places to go, the way people dress, the mannerisms, and the kind of beat they come with. All that is put in the form of music and dance.
Yeah.
So it's up to you, the viewer. The one thing I love about Africa, especially when it comes to music, everybody's a star. Everyone, as long as you're in that vicinity, you are a star too. You're not just sucking in the music. You're having your input in it.
Yeah.
So it's not like a star and the fans. No,
you're part of the school.
You're part of the, everybody's one entity. Till that jam is over.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you were you teach, you do these storytelling in schools,
That's
and
right.
this last year has been A little crazy. So how has that affected the way that you have sort of...
Well, I would say I'm very lucky.
Okay.
Why did I say that?
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that.
I have a boy
but-
who's 9 years old.
Right.
He's called Henry. So what I can't teach in schools, I give to him. So you're going to take it to the next generation.
Yeah. But
That's
just
his job.
70%, not the whole 100%.
No.
Because you want him to get the answers himself.
Yes. I give him half.
Oh, half. Listen, your grandmother gave you 75.
I was
Come
very
on.
lucky.
Poor Henry.
He's got some work.
He really has, yeah. He's got it tough, man. Brilliant. I asked Christian earlier what message, because it has been a really tough year for people of colour, what message you have to young aspiring musicians like you were, you know, just a couple of years back. What message you have for them?
Number
what would you
one,
say?
don't stop learning.
Yes.
Number two, encourage yourselves and others. Number three is onwards and upwards.
Yeah, fantastic. I also like a message in 3 points.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good, isn't it? And I hear you're going to sing us out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, not just sing us out.
Oh.
We're going to dance.
Oh, you're going to dance. Okay, so you're going to dance. And are you, can you, I was going to ask you to introduce yourself before I say goodbye to everybody.
All right.
So what are you playing?
No, I'm going to play with my legs. I've been sitting down for a long time. I'm going to dance this time.
Okay.
I'm just going to play the track.
Okay.
We're going to dance. I've been playing the cajon,
Uh-huh.
and then I've been using this. Can you show me something for B&Q? Because if I start to go on their shop and I'm looking for something, so that I don't think I'm looking for something else.
That's number
Right.
This number one. This is the.
Very important, number two.
Number two.
two.
Okay, I like
So,
it. Butter knife.
Yeah. In case you want to cut the best cake, look for something like this from B&Q. If you can't find it there, well, there must be other good shops around. And that's part of the Gumbe music component.
Fantastic, yeah. I'm really sorry to say that we have to say goodbye, but luckily this is, like I said, 2-part series, so I hope to see everyone back here, if you can, next week. I want to thank Amani Creatives. Of course, we have to thank Christian and Papa Sam. Yeah, you're very welcome. And next week we have Yusra Warsama, who is a Somalian actress and theatre practitioner, and Tshepe Tshepela, Congolese pianist and composer. And finally, thanks to the National Lottery Heritage Fund for their financial support. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well done.